Hey everyone, welcome back to Ontario Gardening. So today we are making tomato sauce. Now we are making a basil garlic tomato sauce, but if you wanted to eliminate those out of this recipe and just make tomato sauce, you just wouldn't add those things and you would just do the tomatoes themselves. So you would need tomatoes and lemon juice for that. But since we are doing a tomato basil garlic sauce, I will show you that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take about 20 pounds, which is about half a bushel of your Roma tomatoes, and you are going to core them and then quarter them. So you're taking off the end and you are going to then, each person does it their own way, you can do it however you want, but we're going to take off all four sides and you're going to be left with the core, throwing that away. And we are going to quarter these up now at this point, and that's what we're going to save. So doing that with all 20 pounds, putting them into a stock pot, because at this point we're going to cook them down. So here are the other ingredients that you're going to need for this specific recipe. And this is going to make either about 7 or 8 pints or 3 to 4 full quarts. You're going to need 8 minced cloves of garlic, a 1/4 cup of fresh basil minced up, a cup of onion, which is about 1 large onion, just chopped up, a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, and some lemon juice. So those are the other ingredients needed for this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take those tomatoes that are all cut up and in the stock pot. So we've got the tomatoes in that stock pot on the stove. It is quite full, so you're going to need a large one. And we are going to turn our oven onto high. And at this point, we are going to continue to stir this so that nothing's burning on the bottom of this pot. But we are going to continue stirring it until they start to all cook down. And you'll see that as we go. It's going to take about 20 minutes to a half an hour. While that's going, on the side here, we've got our pan on a low medium. We're going to put in that tablespoon of olive oil into the pan, and we are going to add our garlic, and we're also going to add our onion, and we're also going to cook this down at the same time just until it gets soft. So just make sure you're not burning them or getting them too brown. That'll only take about 10 minutes, but we're going to do that while this is just kind of cooking on the side, getting two things done at once. While this is going, I've got my jar sterilizing inside of the dishwasher, and I will show you what this looks like as it cooks down so you can see kind of where we're at once everything is done. But continue to just cook everything down, stirring both. This is going to be hard to stir, and once it gets soft, you will see at the bottom it starts to get a little bit watery, and these are going to get like mushy, the skins are going to separate, that sort of thing. We'll be back in a minute, in about 20 minutes, half an hour, once everything's good, and we'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, and as you can see, as it starts to cook down, the water rises almost above the top of the tomatoes. Everything's really starting to get mushy. So I am going to put in that 1/4 cup of basil right into our tomatoes here. I'm going to mix it around, and I'm going to let this simmer down for just a couple more minutes. The onions are done on the side here with the garlic. Everything's soft, so that's just going to stay here with no heat. And just let this simmer for just a couple more minutes. We still got it on high. We haven't touched the temperature. We just continue to stir so nothing sticks to that bottom. Okay, so it's done simmering. We're going to turn off the stove just for now, and we are going to move this onion mixture in here, and now it's all going to get pureed up at the same time. So I'm just going to put it all together instead of trying to blend it separately. It makes my life a little bit easier. So now at this point we have our mixture and we're ready to put it into our blender and puree it up. So I have my blender, but I also have a bowl to the side. And the reason I have that is because I can't put the mixture back into the pot just quite yet as you go, because you're just going to keep blending the same stuff over and over. So putting it into a bowl on the side, and I've got that once that's full, and everything's good and everything's blended, then I can put it back in the pot. Hope that makes sense. So let's ladle this in. And I have just a regular old blender, and I find that putting it on milkshake or smoothie at a high speed blends it up perfectly. So I'll show you what that looks like. So as you can see, it's going to be very hot, so just be careful as you're working in your batches and transferring things over. I'm wearing an apron because there is splashback and I have a white kitchen. So we're just going to keep going until all of this is blended up. Okay, so we have it transferred back on the stove. We've got it on a medium-high setting, and we are going to continue to stir it and cook it down. In the meantime, I have my canner just getting up to a boil. So this is going to take about half an hour if you wanted to continue to cook it down. So you'd want to cook it down to about half to get a really, really thick pasta consistency, like the sauce consistency. This is going to be dependent on how you like the consistency of your sauce. Some people like a really thick sauce, some people like a really thin sauce. So for us personally, this is almost good, like the way that it is now as this puree. I'm going to cook it down a little bit as my canner reaches a boil, and just to make sure that it's nice and hot for when I put it into the hot jars and back into the hot canner, because you don't want this mixture to cool down, because then when you put the cool contents into a hot boiling water canner, you risk your jars cracking. So you at least want to keep this warm. But we're going to put it on a medium-high setting, and like I said, cook this down. Recipe calls for cooking it down by half to fill those 8-pint jars. If you did keep it at this consistency, if this was good for you, you probably will get a little bit more than 8 pints. Or 3 quarts. I will just warn you on that. But I will show you in a few minutes once this is up to a boil and we've got this cooked down a bit, what we're looking at, and show you canning it up. Okay, so as you can see, it has started to cook down already. It's a solid inch. It's been about 20 minutes. You can see where the line was here. So it's cooked down to where I like it, to where the consistency is that I want. So if you are doing pint jars, we are going to put a tablespoon of lemon juice at the bottom of each pint jar. If you are doing full quarts, you're going to want to do 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per jar. So just on the bottom. If you accidentally forget, you can throw it on top. Just give it a good shake before you cook it down and serve it later, but don't worry about it. Bottom of the jar, tablespoon each for these pints. So at this point, I am going to ladle that sauce mixture into the jars. We're leaving about ½ inch headspace. So I would go to about this line here on your jars. And now you're going to take a wet or damp cloth and you're going to wipe the rim. And if you have a chopstick or a knife on hand, you just want to remove the air bubbles. And you can do that before you even wipe the rim. That's completely up to you. Now we're going to add our lid. And that's just from the hot water on the stove over there. And you're going to add your band, and you're only going to want to go fingertip tight. If you go any tighter than fingertip tight, then you risk siphoning that lid and it crushing in on itself. So we've got everything all in our jars. We're going to do that for the rest of them, and then we're going to throw them in the canner. And we're just going to drop these down into our boiling water bath canner for 35 minutes for pint jars, 40 minutes for quart jars. So just to let you know, we've got this down on a low because we do have some left over. So I can only get 7 jars into my canner at a time. So obviously the consistency that I have it at, we're going to get more than 7 jars. It looks like we might actually get another batch. So I'm going to get some more jars sterilized. And while that's cooking for 35 minutes, this stays on low, stirring every once in a while just to make sure that you are keeping it up to temperature for when it goes into the water. So we will see you in about 35 minutes to see what it looks like all canned up. So here we are, we're all done. I got 12 pint jars out of my batch at the consistency that I chose. So that just gives you a heads up as to kind of what you did there. So I have hard water, that's why it's all white on the top. So this is your base sauce. Of course, if you had just done the tomatoes with that same process, you aren't gonna have the pieces of garlic and the basil and that kind of thing in there. But even still, with the garlic and the basil and the onion taste in there, when you pour it in your pot and you're ready to make your sauce and warm your sauce up when you're actually serving dinner, you can still add more stuff to it. You can add all the herbs and spices that you want. Feel free to get creative with it. This is really just a base sauce. I will definitely add more flavorings once we get to that point. And then you can use it just as like a basic marinara as well. So feel free to play around with it. But this is your basic tomato sauce without having to do all that peeling and such. So anyways, we will talk to you soon. Bye.